Hi everybody, welcome to my channel. Yes, ignore the bangs. Always the fight with the bangs. I am Judy. Glad you're here, glad for new subscribers. Guess what, people? I read a couple of books and I am very happy that I was able to do so. Now, they were on this Kindle that actually was given to my daughter, but she didn't want it and she gave it to me. So I thought, I might as well use this thing. So I decided to read some books. I looked up some things. And I always wanted to read this one particular book. And it is by the American writer and journalist, Nellie Bly. And she was born in 1864 in Pennsylvania. She was born Elizabeth Cochran. Later married a very wealthy man, much older than she was. I guess that's the way it was done. And it was like he was 70 and she was 30 or something like that. Very wealthy man with the last name Seaman. No jokes, please. So she's known. Her real name was Elizabeth Cochran Seaman. But she went by the pseudonym in her writing is Nellie Bly, taken from the popular Stephen Foster song, Nellie Bell, I do believe. Anyway, I love Stephen Foster. You can ask my kids. I should bring them in. If they don't want to be on camera and say, does Mom like Stephen Foster? And those types of things. And they'll say, yes, unfortunately she does. Anyway, digression. So I wanted to read one of her very famous books. It didn't start as a book. It started as a serial in the World newspaper. Pulitzer-owned paper in New York called The World. And she was one of the first woman journalists that was in the United States. And one of the first things that her publisher sent her to do, and she was game for it, she was, a little apprehensive, but who wouldn't be, was to go examine the supposedly notorious Blackwell Insane Asylum. So, I hope I got it. Yeah, I'm trying to remember it, yeah. It was on Blackwell Island. I guess it's not called Roosevelt Island. They have islands out there. Like Manhattan's an island, but they're the smaller islands. So, it was Blackwell Island. So, in 1887, this was her assignment. To go somehow get committed to this insane asylum on Blackwell Island. And then they promised she would be sprung. They would find a way to get her out of there. Because even nowadays, if you are committed to some place, a mental institution, you can't be released until the doctors say you may be released and you have a place to go. Which is really, it scares the living daylights out of me. Even in this modern 21st century, I'm not crazy, I'm divine. Well, I'm not crazy, but one of those things scares me. Like, what if somebody puts me in the loony bin and I'm stuck there forever? Because that one time where they accidentally stuck me in on the mental floor at Northwestern, oh God, that was horrifying. And I thought, I can't imagine being a patient there. Anyway, back to the story. So she wrote this serial, and it was so popular that she was asked to put it in book form and publish it. And that's what became 10 Days in a Madhouse by Nellie Bly. And it is a short read, which is good for someone like me at this moment in my life. But it's very, very interesting. I read it in one evening, which, because it wasn't particularly long, but it was just one of those books you didn't want to put it down till you found out what the conclusion was. And what she did, she's also one of those advocates for human rights. with this account of what happened. So she talks about how, you know, she had a comfortable life, and she went to pretend that she was a crazy lady, an insane woman. She went first to a woman's boarding house where working women, you know, not working women, but women who worked in New York. They could have been recent immigrants. They could have been widows. There could have been all different circumstances, but they needed somewhere to stay. So she found one of these places, got herself let in, but then she made out that she was a little bit nutty. She didn't want to go to sleep. She said to the matron that she thought all the women were insane and crazy. So she was building on this. So they finally, the next day, they had the police come and take her in front of a judge. And even though he was a very nice judge, she had to somehow convince him and doctors and everything that she was not quite all there. Some birds were missing from the trees. And she did manage. First they sent her to Bellevue, which most of you have heard of Bellevue, and went into their insane asylum. Now, mind you, this is 1887, okay? This is well before certain things were established, just certain standards. So she talks about Bellevue. And then they send her on the boat with, I think, a few other women to Blackwell Island. And she's told, you will never leave this place. And she goes on to describe the intake process as it was. You're being stripped of all her clothing, given ill-fitting, ill-made clothing that did not keep them warm, being forced to take an ice-cold bath in a tub in front of all these other people, and only 2 towels to share. And she described that some of the women there had nasty, what's the word, you know, something, you know, horrible eruption, you know, skin eruptions. So they probably had, you know, boils and other, God knows what, you know, on their skin. And she said she opted to use the petticoat of her skirt to dry her face, as opposed to sharing this towel with dozens of other women and women who had skin diseases. I don't blame her. And then she describes how they were put in different wards, in different halls. They had the one section, the lodge. I guess that was where the really, was it the lodge? I'm trying to remember. But anyway, I don't want to give everything away, but there was, you know, a section for the truly insane. And then they had sections for the, yeah, you're insane. And then they had sections where there's like, yeah, you're insane too. But she said a lot of these women were not insane. They either had nowhere to go, they had relatives who didn't want to take care of them, or many of them were immigrants who did not speak English. And so they had no advocate for them. So they were put there simply because they didn't speak English. And it's a horrifying thing to think that would happen. And we're not going to get all political here. We're talking about this book, 10 Days in a Madhouse by Nellie Bly. Okay. But what she describes, you know, it was September, I suppose, and they said they don't turn the heat on till October. So the women were always really, really cold. Like, well, she must have done this in 1886. Because if it was September. No, it could have been 1887. Yeah, it was 87. But anyway. So, yeah, it was September of 87, I do believe. She says how everybody was always so cold because, you know, they were forced for these cold baths. And then they had no real way to dry themselves off, and the beds were inefficient to keep warmth in, and the food they were given was inedible. She didn't eat for several days. She describes the bread as being black, and she was given a piece. She said the first piece she was given, it had butter on it, but the butter was so disgusting nobody could eat it. But she found out she could get an unbuttered piece of bread, so they gave her this unbuttered piece of bread. It's all black. She said she didn't eat it because she found a spider in it. Oh, God. So she describes all these unbelievably horrible conditions. And she talks about some of the women who were there for no other reason than they had no one to take care of them, or they didn't speak English, things like that. So she got sprung from the cracker box by a lawyer, got her out. They said, hey, this is actually Nellie Bly, you know, she's not insane. And the upside of this, she got to testify before a grand jury about what was actually going on in this place that was supposed to be taking care of its patients, but clearly wasn't. They had apparently 16 doctors. Only 2 actually did anything. They had a bunch of nurses who were sadistic, who beat patients, choked patients, and horrible and just abuse up the wazoo, you know. So she did testify in front of a grand jury, and she had to recount everything that went on. And she was relieved that she was actually believed. And what happened is a complete change of the facilities. They started to give better clothing, provide heat, give fresh food, not stop, you know, they got rid of all these sadistic nurses, and there was a complete overhaul of this place. And the upshot, again, you know, this major victory for this, you know, one of the early feminists, if you want to say, is an allocation of an extra $1 million for running the asylum. $1 million in 1887. That's a lot of money. So she actually did a lot more in her lifetime. And she died fairly young. Well, maybe not for then, but for these standards, you know, I think she was 54 when she passed away. And she could have done a lot more. She did live to see women get the vote. And she had a very interesting life. So I highly recommend looking up Nellie Bly, 10 Days in a Madhouse. Let me double check that I'm saying that right. Yeah, 10 days in a Madhouse. An easy read, but you know, written in the vernacular of the late 1800s, but it's not inaccessible. You can definitely understand what's being said. It's not, say, reading Beowulf where you need a dictionary to understand what's being said. This is easily understood. So yeah, I give a high thumbs up for that particular piece, and I started reading some more by her because I've always wanted to read, but sometimes you just never get to the authors you want unless you really make that effort. So I made the effort, and I'm glad I did. So there you go, another one of my interesting book reviews. Hope you enjoyed it. Leave a comment below. Let me know if you've read it and what did you think about it. And I will talk to you all later. Bye-bye.